Hey, it's time for another Coffee Talk wrap-up. Yes, it's Thursday, December 21st, and it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and so it's time for me to make this wrap-up when I have the opportunity to do so. Anyway, today's topic is going to be emotions. Once again, our Coffee Talk was a very intense group. There was a lot of things that were discussed, but I want to focus in on the topic of emotions because we all share our emotions, and I'm talking about what we consider the warm and fuzzy ones and the ones that are cold and prickly. Because we all have our experiences and we have these emotions which are attached to our sensory, visual, auditory, touch, feel, smell. We use them to bring in the data, to bring in the experience, and then our emotions kick in and we create a response to those emotions. Probably more accurately, a reaction to those emotions. And I've talked about this before, to avoid reacting and rather choosing a response. And a lot of that response is based upon your awareness, so what level of awareness you're at as to who you are and what you're experiencing. Instead of making a judgment based upon your egotistical way of looking at things, meaning that this is wrong and that is right. Instead of doing that, it's about recognizing and observing what is happening and then identifying your connection with that. Now, through our emotions, sometimes somebody can say something and it'll make us angry or frustrated or sad or feel guilty. Those are the lower level vibrational feelings of emotions. And then there's on up into the fact of pride and courage and acceptance and joy and happiness and peace. Those are also emotions. The confusing part about it is the fact that we have our emotions that are tied into our ego, and then there are the emotions that present themselves as a result of our connecting to our higher self. Now, let me briefly just give you a description of the difference between the two, because within us, we all have an ego, and the ego is there for a purpose. It's to serve us, to protect us, and to give us an identity. So when we come into this world as a small child, we need our ego to protect us. This is mine, this is mine, this is mine, these are mine, these are my things. And I need these things because they help me survive in this world. As you get older, you realize, do I really need those things? Probably not. Only the basics. We do need water. And love and air, and there are things that we do need. And our higher self is making sure that we get those things. I can guarantee you that too. But the ego is designed to particularly do that in the midst of the conflict of the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all, except to realize there comes a point when you realize, do I want to continue to let my ego control me in all my decisions and all my awareness and all my emotions? So we may experience frustration, we may experience anger. The question is, how long do I want to hold on to that emotional feeling? How long do I want to have that experience? Because it's a struggle at times when we are trying to understand what's going on within us, let alone what people or what the circumstances are happening out here. So our emotions are tied into our reaction or our response. And as you evolve and become more aware of who you are and connect to your higher self, it becomes a choice of a response. And it comes naturally over a period of time. Now, there's a progression there between the ego and the higher self of identifying who we really are. And you get to choose as to who that is. That's your choice. And therefore, your emotions are going to reflect that. So if you're feeling depression, or if you're feeling frustration, or even you can be experiencing happiness, which is driven by the emotions of the ego. The ego gets very happy about things, and it may not, because it's very self-centered. The ego is very self-centered. So the ego is looking out for itself. The higher self is looking at the big picture. It is connected to the source of all things. And the higher self, in the higher self, there's no judgment. It's more of a fact of acceptance. And the higher self is all about loving you in an unconditional love, whereas the ego's love is conditional. So there appears to be this conflict, and as long as we're holding on to our egos, there is a conflict. There's a duality upon I love you, but I don't love you, and for whatever reasons they may be. But when you begin to let go of the ego's love, you move up into the love of the higher self, which is unconditional. That is your true spiritual being of who you are. It is the source of who you are, is that unconditional love. And with that comes this unconditional peace and joy. And even though the ego has its own peace and joy, it's not the same as that which comes from the higher self. There's a complete difference. There's a transition. Now, we can, in a way, fool our egos by getting joy in coming together and having discussions like we do at Coffee Talk. And the ego gets into the rapport and the excitement and the camaraderie and the sharing. The ego can thrive off that because we all get to share our perspective, which is quite often ego-driven. We all get to share our questions about what it is that we're seeking, which is also ego-driven. But it's through those things, through those experiences, that we become more aware of our higher self. So in a sense, we're kind of fooling the ego to giving it what it thinks it wants so that we can become more aware of our true higher self. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying here, but there's an evolution, a transcendence from the ego into the higher self. And you begin to identify more with your higher self than you do with your ego. The ego kind of like takes a back seat. It sits in the back of the car. You're driving now in connection with your higher self. And you're looking at this big picture in front of you, and you only got this little rear view mirror that you look back and see what the ego's doing to make sure it's staying where it's supposed to be. So, emotions. Emotions is nothing but E in motion, meaning energy in motions. So as we experience it, all emotions, be it through our ego or through our higher self, it's all energy flowing. And it's all divine in the sense. So I move away from the idea that that's evil and this is good. It's not. It's a dance between the two, between the light and the darkness. It presents itself in a paradoxical way, and what we're to do is to not make judgment upon the evil or the good, but rather recognize that it is what it is, and to choose the response instead of the reaction to what it is, and instead of making the judgment. It means making a discernment of what I want to have in my life versus condemning someone and making a judgment or condemning ourselves. The only reason we judge other people is because we judge ourselves. So if you can let go of that judgment of yourself, you'll find yourself more accepting of yourself and loving yourself and doing the same for other people. Well, I hope that I've given you some insight. These are just a little bit of what we touched on in Coffee Talk today. And once again, we're going to meet next Thursday, and I'll give you another report. Thank you. God bless. Namaste.